Chapter 4: The Mechanic. Anika Weiss knew the Sturmhund better than anyone alive. She had practically built it wire by wire, code line by code line, though her name only appeared as a footnote in the project ledger, buried beneath 3 levels of redacted authorship. The honor, as always, belonged to Falk Reinhardt, the Iron Wolf of Dresden, the golden son of the war. She had watched the medals pile up beside his name, while her own presence was edited out of photos like a ghost. Falk was a killer. Anika was a mechanic, and the Sturmhund was their shared child, twisted into a weapon she never meant it to be. The hangar at night was hers alone. Fluorescent strips overhead buzzed with uncertain rhythm, flickering too late to match her movements. Shadows pooled beneath the mech's feet, soft and oily like spilled ink. The smell of ozone and hydraulic grease clung to the air, metallic and faintly sweet. Her socket wrench clicked in precise intervals, almost meditative. Each turn brought a tiny release of pressure in her spine, like air hissing from a valve. She tapped into the neural response architecture and quietly compiled a patch, a delay loop masked under redundant thermal compensation, barely a hiccup. But in combat, even a fraction of hesitation might change something. A bullet aimed a moment too late. A lock-on taking just long enough to misfire. Just enough to save a child holding a stick mistaken for a rifle. "You're quiet tonight," she whispered, her palm resting against the cold inner rim of the cockpit. "I'm not hurting you." She bit the inside of her cheek. Talking to machines again. Maya would mock her if he heard, but it helped her think. Why are you doing this? The question didn't come with judgment, just familiarity. It had been with her since the first combat trial, when she saw a village scorched, because the system couldn't distinguish between a heat signature and a weapons lock. She hadn't slept that night, just rewrote code until her eyes bled. She stood and stretched, bones cracking. Across the bay, half-assembled mechs loomed like gods waiting to be born. Wiring spilled from their limbs like entrails. Someone had left a toolbox open. She crossed the floor, closed it. Habit. She glanced up at the high window, a sliver between blast shutters. Smoke curled lazily against a dusky sky. A soft, distant thud trembled through the concrete, like someone knocking from the other side of the world. From here, she could sometimes see the battlefield. Tonight, she saw something else. Movement in the lower courtyard. Engineers unloading crates. One stopped, glanced up at her window, then kept going. She turned back. The Sturmhund waited. The inspectors arrived with the sun, wearing pressed grey uniforms that didn't dare wrinkle. Their boots cracked like gunshots on the concrete. One older, lean and hawkish, the other younger, his collar stiff with starch. Anika wiped her hands and straightened, her expression slipping into the flat professionalism that passed for obedience. "Anika Weiss," barked the older one. "Report." Routine diagnostics completed, plasma coils scrubbed, coolant systems purged, neural relay mapped to specification, targeting resolution deviation within acceptable range, 0-point drift at 0.28%. The younger one frowned. "Open all systems." She hesitated only a breath before stepping to the terminal. A blue-green glow bathed her face as she initiated the diagnostics. The hesitation loop nested beneath layers of harmless noise. Harmless if you didn't know where to look. Targeting alignment? the young inspector asked, eyes scanning over her shoulder. Stable, she said. Recent logs confirm average lock time decreased 2.7% from last cycle. He raised an eyebrow. Improvement? Correct. Manual refinements to sensor latency. He nodded, jotting notes. They ran the usual gauntlet: weapon systems, servo response, onboard AI handshake, power draw patterns, no red flags. Her code lay buried like contraband in a church. As they left, the older inspector glanced back, eyes unreadable. Not suspicion, just the stare of a man, too long in the machine. She let the breath go. Later, she sat on the gantry, feet dangling. Below, the mech slept in silence. She watched the sun burn the mist from the battlefield. A ripple of motion across the ridge caught her eye. There, the Sturmhund, its black hull scarred from combat, claw actuators flexing as it advanced. Falk's mechanical, others admired it, worshipped it even. To Anika, it was an animal in a metal skin. Then it paused. A fraction of a second, a hitch in motion. She leaned forward. There it was again. It shifted weight before advancing. Not a full stop, just a moment of doubt. Her chest tightened. That was her code. She knew it like a lullaby. Falk might never notice, might even curse it in battle, but to her, it meant something. A delay born of compassion. And then the world exploded. A shell landed just beyond the ridge, and the Sturmhund surged forward again. But the pause was real. Her work mattered. The mech came back, trailing sparks and smoke. Its right leg dragged, actuator hissing, with ruptured pressure. Armor hung like torn skin. A gash across its left flank, exposed coolant lines, flickering with light. Falk climbed out, bloody and snarling. Helmet hit the floor with a crack. "Where the hell were the backups?" he snapped. Pivot seized. "Nearly cost me my damn head." He didn't wait for an answer, just stormed toward the med bay, cursing under his breath about traitors and traps and invisible enemies. Anika moved. Only once he was gone. Inside, the cockpit stank of burnt insulation. Cables blackened, data readouts flashing amber. She ran a full diagnostic sweep. The left coolant array was dead. But Falk hadn't mentioned that. He complained about pivot failure. That was strange. She opened the subsystem logs. Her code was there, nestled inside the targeting logic, just where she'd left it. But something else was, too. A nested command, hidden under a deprecated maintenance override. Not hers. The syntax was sloppy, almost rushed. Her mouth went dry. Someone had modified her code. Not a system update, a manual edit. She pulled up the origin hash. DS439 Schröder. That name wasn't in her department, not even in the engineering branches. Internal operations. Her hands shook. Someone had gone in after her. Or before. Another mechanic? Number not Meyer? Not Lee? Their code was blunt. This was precise. She shut it down, closed the cockpit, stepped back into the dark, and breathed deep. She had thought she was alone, but someone else was fighting too. She didn't sleep. In the server room, bathed in the pale pulse of status lights, Anika tracked the override's commit trail. It linked back to Central Command's last push, a routine update buried within overrides to behavioral patterns, revisions to stabilization coefficients, targeting heuristics fine-tuned to accelerate acquisition time. Together, they dismantled everything she had done. She traced Schroeder's ID, internal operations, a shadow unit buried in the org chart, no photo, no personal logs, just batch commits, and one cold line. Field compliance adjustments. She leaned back, staring at the ceiling. They weren't just watching Falk, they were watching her. She pulled older logs. 4 months back, one of her earliest patches failed in the field. She thought it was a bug, but the logs showed a silent override deployed minutes later. They'd caught her, and rather than flag her, they'd countered her, like players in a game. She whispered to the room, "How long have you known?" No answer, just the low thrum of the coolant fans. Anika sat, hands limp. She had thought herself a saboteur, a whisper in the wires, a conscience carved into cold metal. But the board was larger than she knew. And someone else was already playing the game.